Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Shahai Saab. We are all are quite aware of the complications of COVID-19 that started way back in March 2020. But to throw more light on that particular topic, I'd like to invite Professor Nusrat Rahman Saab to initiate the discussion. The floor is all yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you indeed so much for all of you for having provided this wonderful opportunity to share my rambling thoughts and experiences, especially on migration, development, and what is the implication of COVID-19, especially in case of India. I am very, very indebted to Sherani Saab, Dr. Sadaf Farid, and all distinguished members for providing this good chance to interact with all of you. Of course, virtually. Had it been face to face, we would have interacted, we would have got more chance to get to know all of you. The topic on being asked to speak is very relevant today in the sense that this migration has been well recognized as one of the very important agents for bringing a lot of changes or development, not only at the national level, but also at the international level. And how COVID-19 has impacted adversely, we'll see to it. So three areas, three issues, or three dimensions to which we all are going to understand is migration, means international migration, and then development, and the impact or the effects of COVID-19, especially on this very important thing. And we know pretty well that this migration has been well recognized in the sustainable development also, as how previously we were talking a lot about how to control migration, but now we have come to the point that we are now talking about as how to manage migration, how to govern migration effectively so that it would be useful for the development at the macro level, also at the micro level. And we know pretty well that India is one of the very important countries which sends a lot of migration or migrants to different parts of the world. And here we would like to also know about migrants or the volume of migrants and diaspora. These two terminologies are very, very interrelated, very interconnected. We know that basically the very formation of diaspora is mainly due to the migration or to the migrant workers. And we also know that India is very much interested in order to promote now migration. Previously, we were talking a lot about as how to control migration, how to regulate migration with the help of our migration policy, which came into being in 1983. But I think very recently, the migration policy has been introduced, which is, which is going to come very soon, very shortly, which will be very promotional rather than regulatory. And if you see the size of total migrant workers, especially from our own country, it is constituted, it is estimated to be around 18 million. If you consider the total size and the volume of diaspora, Indian diaspora, it has gone up to 32 million. So it's a very important, and one thing which is also very important to be noted over here is the total remittances to which we all have been receiving every year. For the last many years, India has replaced China in terms of the receipt of the remittances. If you see the latest data provided by the World Bank, I think it has gone up to 81 billion US dollar, to which we have recently in 2019 and 2020. So India is the first country, top, and even in terms of the outflow of the migrants or the sending migrant in total size is 80 million is a huge number. And especially if we talk about the destination country, these 6 GCC Gulf Cooperation Council countries are very, very important in the sense that almost 9 million Indian workers or the migrant workers are living in that very region, and they send a lot of remittances. Almost 45 to 50% remittances are coming from that region. So let me also discuss with you some statistical facts and the figures so that we could understand. So, Dr. Sadat, may I know to how much I have been given the time so that I could organize my deliberation within the time, and I will be very happy to give the floor for debate and discussion. Means many scholars are sitting here, so they would definitely interact with me, and they would put some questions, comments, and observations. So in a way, we learn a great deal. So if I give the floor open for the debate and discussion, so what is the time for my deliberation, so that I will confine myself, and time would be certainly given for questions and answers. Yes, now Dr. Sadaf.
Sir, it would be very nice if you enlighten us for around 20 to 24 minutes or 25 or 30 minutes like that.
Okay, okay. I think I will confine I will honor the time, because if we don't discuss, then the very deliberation is not be so well taken. So time would be also given for questions if there is a format like this. So let me present some statistical facts and the figures. Otherwise, these are the statistics which are very important. We as a social scientists, we have the habit to present the points. Just hold on for a minute. नीचे रखा है. Just hold on for a minute. Just I would like, because otherwise I will digress elsewhere. नीचे नीचे नहीं है this one. I hope you all are seeing it. आप लोग देख रहे हैं वैसे? It is seen to you all.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir,
sir.
it's visible.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
So I think many slides are there. I will skim some slides, because time has been given only for 20-25 minutes. And the time is, yes, by 12:30, I'm going to finish it off. And if the situation allows, so we will be happy to have the question also. So just have a look on it. This is very important point to which I would like to highlight that if you see the total volume of migrant workers,
Sorry
right?
to interrupt, Professor.
Yes,
We
please.
cannot actually see the slides. We're able to see the screen, but
Okay, okay. Just hold on for a minute. Tabesh,
sure, Professor.
Tabesh, I think there's some technical issue. So it is not shown. इसको ऑफ करके देखो जरा.
Yes, sir, it is visible now.
Okay, just a second, please. Just a second. I think it is visible now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Are you hearing me also? My voice is also going to.
Yes, sir. It is
Okay,
audible, sir.
that's great. That's great. So let us proceed further. So I think global migration trends. So are you seeing it? Global migration
Yes,
trends.
sir. Yes, sir. We can
Okay,
see that.
okay. So I will be very quick because time is very short. So in 2019, see the data: 272 million migrant workers across the world. If we calculate, I think 3.5% of the total world population are on the move, means are considered with the migrant workers. Out of that, 48% of the total migrant workers, it is constituted by women, means almost 50%. So it's very important, even in terms of the gender. If we calculate, 50% of the migrants belong to the women. So this is very important. And if you see in terms of the India, in terms of the positioning, I think it comes in top 10 countries, as we all know that. And 74% of all international migrant workers of the working age group. This is very economically very important, that the age range from 20 to 64 years. So this is very, means all economically active sections or the age group belong to this. So more than a half the international migrants, 141 million, lives in Europe and North America. As we know that if you see the total, if you divide the entire world into south and the north, as we all know that north region is very, very economically important, industrially more developed countries, and people basically migrate. Majority of the people migrate from south to the north. We know pretty well, so almost 50%. And here it is also very important that 25 million migrants are living in the Gulf Cooperation Council. These are the 6 countries. That is very important from India point of view. Out of 25 million, 9 million are from India. So yeah, almost more than 30-35% are from India. And this is the only region. The Gulf region is also very important in the sense that almost 50%, almost 50-51% are from the outside. They are considered the foreigner or the expatriate workers. So it is the only region in the world over there. I think foreign workers or the expatriate workers dominate over that one. Mean they constitute more than almost 50%. This is very important to understand. So there is some implication out of that. And here, through this graph, we easily understand that, of course, due to certain problems which arises in any region of the world, sometimes these trends of migration get offset. But if you see the total as a whole at the macro level, at the world level, I think just have a look on 1995. It was 2.8%. Now it has gone up to, in 2019, 3.5%. So I think what I would like to put it before you, and it is very interesting to note that, do you know what happens basically? Of course, sometimes there is a regulation on the part of the developed countries that they regulate with their own migration policies to stop, to control migration. But if you see the scenario, it is increasing in the ascending order. It is increasing in the very ascending order. So what now we have decided, what we have reached the conclusion that this migration will continue to go. And now there is a study which has been done by many social scientists and the scholars, and now we reach the conclusion migration is not a bad idea. Migration is not a bad idea. It is also it is considered to be one of the very important agent, especially in the South Asian countries or South Asian region, that it is contributing immensely in the development of the region. Take the example of South Asian countries. I think it is happening like that. So it is very, why I am putting all the young scholars and the faculties are listening. So migration is emerging as a very important issue that needs to be studied very deeply, very intensively, and objectively in order to understand the different dimensions of migration, so that it could be, I think, considered in the policy making. See the case of India. So India is one of the very important country in terms of the sending migration or migrants in a way, or due to that very reason, India is receiving enormous amount of remittances to India, and that remittances is considered to be very important, or it's a positive trend on the part of India to consider remittance. And India is trying to maintain the quantum of receipt of the remittances, because it's a point of celebration that India has got the first position since 2008, 2006, I think 2010, and still we are trying our level best to maintain as how to go and how to get maximum remittances, so that these remittances could be used in different ways in order to eradicate the poverty, in order to reduce the unemployment, and many more economic and social evils. In order to eradicate this money or these remittances are being used. So this is very important. So these just have. And we know that pull and push factors of migration, and migration is of variety of kind of things. So the very nature and the reasons of migration, we know that the poverty, unemployment, political repressions, and the human rights abuses and conflicts are the main reasons that push more out of their people out of their home countries. So if we consider, I think here we are talking only about, because here there's a need to understand migration in terms of the development. So here we are considering not the political or the compulsory kind of migration, but here we are talking of the only economic kind of migration, which are voluntary in nature, you know. So economic opportunity, political freedom, physical safety and security basically considered semi-skilled and skilled workers into a new lands, as we all know that. So there's evidence in several studies that the pace of international migration is unlikely to slow anytime and would continue in future. Already we know that it is continuing. So now if you see, I think it was also considered to be very important in terms of when we had the Millennium Development Goals. So in order to eradicate poverty, hunger, extreme kind of hunger, migration was being used. Again, I think now the Millennium Development Goal is over. So now the same thing is repackaged. Now we are calling of again 15 years, from 2015 to 2013. Now we are talking of the sustainable development goal. So even in sustainable development goal, this migration is considered to be very important, and it is going to make some positive headway. So now every country, even those who are basically hosting the migrants, they also consider that because they are not the liability on that country, they are contributing immensely in the economic activity and the other kind of social and social and economic activity, especially in that region. See the case of the Gulf countries. Let me tell you that theoretically speaking, hypothetically speaking, we pull out all the migrant workers, what would happen to the Gulf economy? You can imagine. I think that the Gulf economy is completely based on the human resources which are being supplied by South Asian countries and other labor sending countries. So now let us try to understand why I am saying that in 50s and 60s, migration was considered to be a bad kind of thing. So it was considered to be the liability in the host country, but so is not the case happen now. Now it is based on the supply and demand factors. Where there would be demand, take the example of the Gulf countries. I'm just citing one example. There's a need of the human resource over there, so people are going, migrants are going, especially from that region which have more surplus labor. So it is nothing. If you talk in terms of the demand and supply per lance, I think it is going to help in many ways. Where there is a shortage of labor, supply takes place. So now India is talking a lot about that, because if you look at the new migration policy, which is going to come very shortly, if you say that it is only migration, or what we call it, that it is now promotional. So now we are talking as how to develop our population into the human resource. And we also we know pretty well that now what is basically important, that now we are talking India is a country of demographic dividend country. Means lot of people are basically belonging to the category of 15 to 35 age group. So in a way, India is called that the majority of the population, 2/3 of the population come into the category of what we call young or the youth, means the age of 15 to 35 or 40. So it is a golden opportunity on the part of India to have a good kind of policy, promotional kind of policy, as how to translate this population into the human resource. If we will be able to translate, I think it will become the big asset for the nation. If we miss the bus, definitely it is going to create the liability. See the case of this kind of situation right now. After 20 or 25 years down the line, same chunk of the population will fall into the category of old age, as it is being faced by the West European Union. So this is very important to understand, that as how we are going to use these migrants, our Indians, or the migrant workers, in a very positive way. So I think it is, as we all know that now, with the help of many studies, we get to know that migration is contributing immensely in the development of basically the labor sending countries, means the migrants origin countries. Even they are not considered to be the liability in the host countries or the host society. Even in North America or all these countries, they are enjoying the fruits of the labor resources which are being supplied by the south. So it's the issue not relating to south and the north, it's the issue of relating to every country, as how to take care of their welfare, so that they could become more productive. So this is the point to which I would like to highlight over here. And 3.5 or 3 or 4% population, if we ignore, I think it will only be it will create the problem in the future. So, as a social scientist, as a sociologist, as a social demographer, we must understand the nuances and the importance of this migration, especially in India, as we all know that. So I'm not going to read out all these things. So here, this very important, I think, as we all know, the globalization has created the congenial atmosphere over there. I think it has also pushed migration, which has taken the more speed, unlike the previous one. So we should take the benefit of this labor mobility, where there is a shortage of labor, where there is a surplus of labor. I think we can understand in this case. So now, if you see in Indian situation, new ministry has been created. We all know that that is called skill development, Ministry of Skill Development. The purpose of that ministry is to translate the population into the human resource and supply the same to different parts of the world for the benefit of the society as a whole. So let us try to understand here the role of the remittances. We know that when we talk of the remittances, we don't only talk of the remittances which is economic in nature. I think we also must consider the social remittances, which is being created and which is nothing but the outcome of what we call it migration. So remittances sent by migrant workers contribute significantly in foreign exchange earnings and GDP growth of all the nations, basically from where the people are going to different parts of the world. They also enhance economic betterment of migrants' families. Means here we must understand, we must discuss, we must study at the micro level, at the family level. So a lot of studies has been done. And one thing I would like to share with you, that is also very interesting, that when we talk of the migrants, we only know about the Kerala or Tamil Nadu, some South Indian states, that the migration is taking very rapidly and in a very intensively. But now so is not the case happened. Since 2010, what we understand, that even from Pradesh, Bihar, and the Rajasthan, Punjab, a lot of migrations have started taking place, and basically North India, means UP and Bihar, have replaced South Indian states like Kerala in terms of the volume of the remittances, which are going to, especially in this GCC country or the Gulf countries. So it's very interesting, and why I am saying on the basis of the data provided by the Ministry of now External Affairs. You must be aware that there was a ministry which was created, which was called Ministry of Overseas Indian Affairs in 2004 or 2003, I think. But now, very recently, it has been merged with the Ministry of External Affairs. So there's a division even within that ministry, headed by the joint secretary, that deals with the migration, Gulf migrant workers. So see the situation and see the importance of this one. So why I am saying, I think here, one thing I would like to put it before all the young faculty who should be interested to understand, because this is the area, this is the area which must be considered as the interdisciplinary. And when we talk of now the whole world is becoming interdisciplinary. So is the case of India. If you look at the new education policy 2020, you must be aware that now every university is, or every higher education institution is going to be interdisciplinary in nature by 2035. And 2035 is not far off. Why I'm saying these, like gender issues, human rights, and migrant workers or migrant issues, these all are the emerging disciplines or the issues that is going to overtaken by all, because we cannot say that it can be, migration can be put only in the category of the what we call it, sociology. I think it is the issue which is cutting across the discipline. And now now the age has come, now the time has come to consider these kind of issues like gender is also equally important. So often and we get the circular from the UGC that these are the dominant areas, these are the contemporary issues which are emerging in a very way that needs to be taken care of, that needs to be intensively studied. So I think I'm just flagging so that we, the young scholars and the faculty who are sitting, they could consider as one of the very important issue that needs to be taken care by the research. If you see, I think like University Grants Commission and many other funding agencies like Indian Council of Social Science Research, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, at the national level, they are waiting for a good kind of research proposal. If we submit it, I think we can get a lot of funds. Fund is not the issue at all right now. So my point of discussion and my just flagging all these issues so that we, the young scholars, should come forward and issue these all the challenges. So contributions of migration, as we all know that migration empowers migrant workers in terms of economic independence and higher self-esteem. So I am saying this kind of a statement is being made on the basis of the studies which has been done by many scholars. And if you see the migration, so migration should not at all be considered as a bad idea or negative kind of connotation. We must welcome migration. We must welcome, like previously in the 60s and 70s, we considered population as a bad idea or latest control. Now we are not talking. So many demographers have come with the idea that migration, I think population must be considered as an asset. If we will be able to translate population into the human resource, it becomes the big resources for the development, for the production of any nation. So is the case of migration, where there is a shortage of labor, where there is surplus labor. I think this kind of exchange could take place within the country and outside as well. See the case of India is also a skewed kind of development. We can divide India into the two parts in terms of development in South India and then North India. So definitely South India is much more developed as compared to North India. And the people from North India like Uttar Pradesh, Odisha and Bihar migrate to Western India like Maharashtra, even Kerala, Tamil Nadu, people are migrating. We know that what happened at the time of pandemic. Following pandemic, what happened actually. So I think this is very important to understand the migration in terms internal migration as well as the international migration. So this is very important. I think historically, basically, if we see the genesis of Indian migration or the Indian diaspora, I think just I'm giving you some very sketchy kind of data, sketchy kind of trends and patterns, so that we could be interested. We could be tempted to develop or generate interest in order to understand the migration. So if we see the case of India, historically, 5 patterns of Indian diaspora. Basically, there is a connection. Big connection between the migration and diaspora. Basically, migration leads to formation of diaspora. And here, just have a look. Indentured labor migration, you must have heard. Then Kangani and Maitri labor migration, free or passage migration, voluntary migration to the developed nations of the world like United States of America, Canada, and then Oceania like Australia, New Zealand, and then what we call it, European Union. And the labor migration to West Asia or the Gulf. These are the 5 if we were really interested to understand the genesis, background, patterns of migration and diaspora or Indian diaspora, we need to understand. So, lot of literature is available. When I talk of lot of literature, I think there's a lot of I think what we call it a scope to identify, to understand, to study all these things. So lot of scope is there to study over here. Indian expatriate workers. So here I think we know that what is happening, how Indians are signing, especially in the Europe or the America and other countries, and what is the scenario of the last patterns of migration. Same. When we talk of migration, we cannot escape Kerala in India, we cannot escape the Gulf countries. So 9 million, if we say 9 or 10 million Indians are living there, they are working there, so they are remitting an enormous amount to the remittances. So there is a very good kind of connections, means a very strong connections of India, which is having with the Gulf countries. So Arab came to India and the Indians went to these Arabian countries or the West Asian country. We know pretty well that we have had a very good kind of relations since ancient time. Later, for a long time, we have a cultural and the trade and the commercial relations with this. Oh, I'm sorry. So just I will escape it because time is very short. So just I will just put it share of the population as a foreigners. So this is very important. Just have a look on it. So these are the 50. So what if you calculate the total one, I think it would be 52% of the foreign workers which are living in that entire 6 GCC countries. Just have a look on that. So I have told you about 9 million. So I think it is the data a little bit 1 or 2 years before. But one thing I would like to tell you the how this pandemic has offset this kind of situation. I will let you know. So just I will leave this slide for your sake. Just I told you that just see Uttar Pradesh, 25% of the total population. If you see the Kerala here, I think it is just now 4%. It has reduced to 4%, 25%, and then Bihar. And two very important North Indian states have started dominating this area. So this is changing profile of the labor migrants. I think just have a look on this. So I think composition of the Indians in this GCC country is increasing. Just have a look in here. I think now by two decades, I think it has reached to 16 million. I think 16%. So it is increasing like anything. So there's a very good kind of connection between Indian migration and financial flows, that just it is the trend which has been given over here. And just I have already discussed 81 or 80 million. So India has acquired the first position. Now it has replaced China over there. So our purpose, our policy should be formulated in such a way that we could maintain this, because this has been proved to be very important. So migrants home. So I think economic benefits due to migration, I think just it has been given. And then social benefits of migration, just have a look on this. So social, economic, political, all kinds of benefits we are reaping due to the migration to different parts of the world. So they are also considered as one of the very important cultural ambassadors of India, to which we are talking of diaspora, the migrant workers. So present crisis and implication for migrant workers. So just I am summarizing these kind of things. I think these migrant workers are considered to be very vulnerable. When situation arises like this, pandemic has created a serious crisis on the global level in terms of the migrant workers. So their human rights, their positions have become very vulnerable due to this urgent crisis and these implications. So how we can work so that these issues could be resolved in a very positive way. So there's a risk. I think all these things are very important. Government is trying hard, all the state government and even at the UN. I think ILO and then many more international bodies are working. So we as an academicians must work as how to cope up with this pandemic situation, so that our country could again restore the situation of the war. Otherwise, that very trend of the receipt of the remittances has also got affected badly. And even migrant, they have started coming, they started coming back to the Indian states or the like that. I think again there's a need to work as how to restore and what kind of situations are going to be created in the post pandemic period. We need to work. We as a social scientist, we as a scholar must work in this direction to give the good kind of recommendations and objective kind of recommendations so that recommendations could be simply I think used or could be taken care of in while formulating the policy. Then we will be in a position to understand and how kind of research we needed in near future or in the post pandemic. We the scholar will be qualified enough and competent enough to understand this objective situation, and we can forecast, we can project what kind of requirement are going to be created in the near future or in the time to come, so that our government policy, our policymakers could take or understand this perspective in the right way. Has created a serious catch. I think we know pretty well that I think uh, to summarize, because time has been given, so I should not exceed much time. I think just I have given the very sketchy kind of trends about the how migration is basically relating or how migration is connecting with the development. So there's no doubt about that. It leads to I think migration or the international migrant workers lead the development not only in the country, home country from where they have gone. They are basically contributing immensely in the host countries, in the Gulf country, even the European countries or the American countries. And that society is also benefited, economically benefited, and otherwise also. Their culture is also being enriched. So to make the society a global society or progressive society, their role could not be ignored. So how we cannot ignore their role? Their human rights violation could not be ignored. How we can do so? Only these things are only possible with the help of the scholars like all of us to understand. So last but not the least one is this migration is emerging in a big way, which is cutting across the disciplines. So it has nothing to do with any subject per se, like political science or economics. I think it is cutting across the thing. So as a political scientist, as a social scientist, as a scientist, as a literary figure, how we can understand different implications of this migration so that we could understand in the right perspective and development process could be well taken care of. So I think I'm just stopping here, and time is given for your observation, questions, and anything you need. So now, thank you once again to each and every person for so much patient hearing. Thank you once again. Thank you to Dr. Sadab, Dr. Sherani Saab, and everybody who have given this wonderful chance to share my rambling thoughts and experience with the budding scholars and young scholars and my colleagues also. So Aligarh Muslim University is my alma mater. Whenever I get the chance to speak or otherwise, I always feel pleased. I always feel so happy to get it connected or to come over here. So once again, I am very indebted to each and every person who are listening to me. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor. That was such an insightful discussion from your side. We're actually very honored to have you on this one. I just had a brief question, if I could, Professor. Professor, can you hear me? Can you hear me, sir?
I am hearing you. I think I will be very happy to have few questions. If
Yes.
anything is left or omitted.
Yes, sir. I was just going through the work that you have done. So I just had a simple question on the identity crisis and the issues of identity and integration that South Asian immigrants face when they immigrate to European countries. We all know about the Gulf countries. I wanted to just have a brief insight on that, if I could. Thank you.
Hello, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Just repeat it.
Yes,
Just repeat.
I was just briefly going
Issue
through
of
your work.
integration. Hmm.
Yeah, issues of identity and integration of South Asian immigrants in Europe. In Europe, not Gulf, but specifically in Europe, like briefly.
Yeah, yeah, very good. I went to Paris for basically taking this project issue of identity and integration, especially of migrant workers. I think it is being integrated, and they are taking a lot of studies are being done. So unlike the Gulf countries, I think there's a lot of challenges are there. We cannot say that challenges are not there. Even despite all challenges, I think they are being integrated. They are giving citizenship and many words also. If you see the, I think political system, democratic system, liberal system, at the same time, what we call it that their all rules and regulations are very liberal and democratic and progressive also. So when I was studying, I thought that everybody is interested, especially from India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, and all South Asian countries, that they wish to come over there. They wish to become the part of that. So issue of integration is that one. But if you study the, I think, the system to which they are taking, I think this must be appreciated, and that must be considered as one of the important. Despite all this, sometimes there is a backlash kind of thing takes place. But those who have gone there, see the situation. They have never come back to the place of origin. They wish to stay there. They wish to take the citizenship. They wish to work over there, and I think situation is getting more progressive and liberal in that way. So I think we must understand these kind of things so that we could take all these issues into our own policy, because this migration is not only taking, it's not a one sided. Even India, even all South Asian countries, people are coming. Even in India, I think 12 million foreigners are in India. So now the time has come to, because we cannot have two kind of policy or law, whether our Indians are over there. So if we are expecting it, they should be treated in a very objective and a very welfare way. I think same thing could be happen here also, or the place of origin countries. So no country is only the place of origin, no country is only the place of destination. So migration is, circular in nature. Even people are also coming from the north region to the south region also, but of course in a not much number. But the rules should be across the globe. So here we must appreciate, we must study the UN conventions for migrant workers and their families. So many international covenant, international standards are there. If we understand, so I think issue of integration and identity would be definitely promoted. So I have gone through all these international standards. I think we must appreciate, and we must try to at least we as an academician must, I think, pressurize or must put all these things into the objective manner, so that every country of the world could appreciate and take into the consideration while formulating the national kind of law, rule, regulations, so far as the case of migration or migrant families are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to take just one or two more questions, if you allow, from the chat box. Like, what is the impact on the Indian diaspora of the crashing oil prices in the Gulf alongside the COVID-19 pandemic? On the Indian diaspora, the impact on the Indian diaspora in the Gulf, on the impact of crashing oil prices and COVID-19.
Yeah, true. I think everything, I think this kind of issues have been complicated due to diaspora. So one thing I would like to tell you, that whenever crisis takes place in the Gulf countries, take the example of Gulf crisis. Even at that time, this trend of the very trend of migration gets got upset. So is the case with this time. So I think this is not going to stay. Means this pandemic is not going to stay forever. So mind you, so how we can work? I think it has impacted adversely. Lot of Indians have come back or repatriated to the Indian states or to India. So how we can create the situation? Because again, I think there's a crisis. There's a problem issue of human resource, especially in the Gulf countries or the West Asian countries. When the situation will get over, this pandemic will get over, again there's a need of human resources. And here one thing which is also very important, there's a steep competition between all South Asian states of the Southeast Asian nations. So we compete with the Bangladesh, we compete with the Nepal, we compete with every. So if we have not woken up, if we have not a very apt kind of policy, very dynamic, so we will be left behind. And this first position will also get affected. So how we all should be ready enough? Why I'm again saying that here is an issue that needs to be understood, that needs to be studied very deeply, very intelligently. And how in the labor market we are going to compete, we will have to see. So as soon as this situation will get over, I think we all should be ready enough so that our human resource or our labor supply could not get upset. So now it has got offset and we should treat them. And one thing I would like to tell you is they have become, I talked about the social remittances. So when we talk of the remittance, it has many other dimensions, social remittances. So those who have worked in the GCC or the European countries, they have become very skilled. Many good kind of skills they are having. So how their skills, if they are not going back again, so how their social remittances could be utilized for the further development of India, we need to understand, we need to take into the right perspective. Then India would be benefited economically, socially, and many ways. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Another question that has come our way is, what should the government do to make the nation more self-sufficient? The number of people from our country who migrate to the West or Middle East is huge, especially to countries like Saudi Arabia and Canada. However, barely anyone, most people do not come back from those countries. What does India lack to attract the same amount of population in terms of education or economy or monetary policies?
Yes, very good question. I think, yeah, it's a very complicated and very, I think, important one also. See the situation. See the size of the population. So we need to work on different steps. What basically we were talking a lot about brain drain when I think in 1950s or 60s. Now we have stopped talking of brain drain. Now we are talking of brain circulation or the brain gain. The whole world is now globalized in many ways. We cannot deny this fact. So how we are going to reap the benefits of the migrant work, even they are going. So what I told you that in 1983 regulation or the migration policy, which is considered, of course, that must be considered as the regulatory nature. But now we are making the policy more promotional in the sense.
So you mute, sir. Kindly unmute yourself.
I'm sorry.
No
I
problem.
think I'm audible now. So what I'm the very important point that needs to be understood that if we are educated, if we educate our population, which would be translated in human, wherever they are going, they are remitting a lot of money to India and they can also come back, they are going to remit it. Whether they are coming or no matter, if they wish to help. See, in diaspora has two aspects, NRI and the PIO. PIO means that they have already acquired the citizenship of that country. But now we are attracting them to come over here and invest money. If you invest money in India, I think I think India is going to be benefited, no matter whether you have acquired the citizenship of that country. So now dual citizenship kind of things are also emerging, because that is the demand made by the diaspora, the migrant workers who have settled permanently. So hardly matters how we are going to reap the benefit of the Indian origin people. That is important. So here we are talking of mutual kind of development. So if they are coming, so they will get the cheap kind of labor over here. So they are not coming over here just as the mercy to help India, but they are coming for economic entrepreneurship. So we should continue, we should make our country more economically viable. Definitely they would come, and somebody would also come. So in this contemporary, or in this globalized era, in this interdependent era, I think who is going where, no matter. And one point again, you are talking of education, and of course India is the third largest education system in the world. Let me tell you, it's not a joke. But so far as the case of quality is concerned, again, we don't stand anywhere. So in terms of the quality, again, so since 60s, we are talking a lot as how to ensure quality in our educational institutions. What are the challenges? What are the other research input that needs to be taken care of? See the situation we are celebrating, that 81 billion we have got it, and we are getting, and we should get more. But on the other hand, the students who are started, who are going to Canada or Germany and many countries, so in a way we are losing our remittances, we are losing the money. So if we will be able to enhance the status or the quality of higher education or education per se, so it would be a wonderful kind of thing. And we as a social scientist, we must work as how to ensure quality in our higher education as a whole, so that we could attract at least Middle Eastern or South Asian countries students. Rather, we are sending our children, our students to Germany and Canada and the other European countries. So in a way, we are losing the money. We are losing the remittances. So we need to work, and we need to make our policy more productive, more attractive. So we have the third largest. So many countries are there. So in terms of size, in terms of the system, we are the third or second in the world. But so far as the quality of concern, again, we are living far behind. So we as an academician must work in this direction. And I think new education policy is, let me tell you, I don't have any hesitation to say that new education policy is a panacea. Despite all limitations, the teacher must study very critically. There's no doubt about that. But let us try to implement it in true letter and spirit as we see the situation. So many points are have been mentioned. In 60s and in 68, first national education policy came into being. In that very committee, in that report, it was clearly mentioned that 6% of the GDP would go for education. It didn't happen. Again, 86, same thing happened. It was reiterated again 2020. So we are only thinking as how to invest money. I think six or there are some countries even in Asia, like Korea and many more countries, even Malaysia, spend 10% of their GDP for education as a whole. So how we can create the tempo of this kind of situation in our own country, so that I think our society could understand the importance and significance of two sectors, that is health and education. We see the situation right now we have witnessed, and we have basically devastated like anything due to the failure, or what we call it, not very good kind of health system to which you are. Now we must, I think, awaken and at least start thinking on two very important sectors, education and health. Without education and health, no country can make progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. Actually, I think we'll not be able to take any more questions because of the time limit in the meeting. Thank you so much for your insight. I'd like to invite Dr. Sadaf Farid ma'am for the vote of thanks here. Uh, Dr. Sadaf ma'am.
It's unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Sabi. So I'm here before you to offer a vote of thanks, first of all, to Professor Anisul Rahman, Professor and Director of UGC Human Resource Development Center, Jamia Millia Islamia, for an outstanding presentation. On behalf of the university debating a literary club, we are grateful to him for laying out an academic feast before us. We are also thankful to Professor F.S. Shirani, Coordinator Cultural Education Center, for motivating us to organize this lecture on a topic of most contemporary relevance. Thanks are also due to Mohammad Sabi Ahmed and other students for various organizational efforts. Above all, we express our thanks to all those who participated in this significant academic event. Thank you all.
Uh, Thank you, ma'am. We understand that sir, you unmute, kindly unmute yourself, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. So I feel very privileged to be the part of this great event.
We
My
are,
alma mater, AMU.
we always look forward to hear from more from you. We know that we are actually a paucity of time today, but
I know.
inshallah we will be looking forward to a more
Sure.
a longer event to hear more from you about migration and everything else. Thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
event today, sir. Thank you everyone for joining in today. That would be all from our side. We'll be looking forward to connect with you for more such events. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So may I now leave out?
Yes, sir. Surely.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.